Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today, we're diving straight into a brand new explainer breaking down the mind-bending 2026 film, The Backrooms, demystifying the psychological horror and liminal lore. We're going straight into the deep end here. Whether you're an old-school fan of the 2022 web series or totally new to this, we are stripping away the mystery. We're going to look right at the architecture of an absolute nightmare, so let's just get right to it. So what happens when a parallel dimension feeds on your darkest memories? We're skipping the usual roadmap today because I really want to jump right into the core of this terrifying premise. This story isn't just about cheap jump scares, you know? It asks a deeply psychological question. It presents a world that literally traps you inside your own mind, weaponizing your deepest, darkest flaws right against you. Think about that for a second. I absolutely love this quote from the film, The Backrooms is an encyclopedia of everywhere, but broken. It's like, imagine an infinite magical archive trying to collect every single place that has ever existed. But because it relies on human memory, and let's face it, human memory is incredibly flawed, the spaces it creates end up completely warped. It's this distorted reflection of reality, kind of like looking into a severely cracked mirror. All right, Section 1, the basement portal, falling out of reality. To really grasp how this dimension works, we've got to look at how someone actually gets there in the first place. Enter Clark, our incredibly stubborn store owner. So Clark is down in his basement, right? He's super frustrated by these constant electrical glitches. He's inspecting this weird sliver of light. And then, boom, he just completely phases through the solid wall. There's no magical incantation, no glowing doorway. He just literally clips right out of reality and into a terrifying infinite dimension. And the absolute first thing he sees? A vast, eerily empty, warped version of his very own furniture store. And this brilliantly illustrates the jarring difference between our normal world and where Clark just ended up. In our reality, we're bound by strict physical laws and finite space. But the Backrooms? We're talking about a theoretical 600 million square kilometers of shifting, memory-based architecture. That is an impossible scale. Imagine endless hallways that literally rearrange themselves just based on who's walking through them. It completely throws physics right out the window. Moving on to Section 2, trauma and the entity manifesting the mind. See, the Backrooms doesn't just copy physical rooms. It copies people's inner demons. We really see this play out with Clark's therapist, Mary, who is dealing with some heavy childhood trauma of her own. This is where it gets crazy. Let's break down how this place actually builds its monsters, because it's almost systematic. Step 1, the dimension instantly absorbs the victim's memories the second they cross over. Step 2, it replicates the physical spaces from those memories. And Step 3, this is the terrifying part, it actually manifests a physical entity, a literal monster born entirely from the person's darkest trauma, negative emotions, or, in Clark's case, his massive unchecked ego. When we break these manifestations down, you can really see how the dimension tailors the torture to the specific person. Take Clark, his fatal flaw, a massive ego, and this absolute refusal to ever admit he's wrong. Well, his store's logo is a pirate, so the Backrooms just takes that and weaponizes it, summoning a massive demonic pirate entity to hunt him down. And for Mary, her flaw is unhealed childhood trauma and agoraphobia. So the dimension responds by trapping her in these infinite, inescapable, looping replicas of her childhood home. It's just brutal. Ultimately, it's that exact ego that dooms Clark. He actually realizes his mistakes, but get this, he decides he'd rather stay in this fake, controllable dimension than go back and face reality. Because he just accepts his fate, the pirate entity actually calms down like a satisfied kid and literally consumes him. It's actually a brilliant, hidden visual nod to that famous painting of a Greek titan eating its own child, which we see referenced earlier in the film. It's the dimension literally reabsorbing what it created. Okay, let's dive into this next part. Section 3, the ASC conspiracy, who broke reality. To figure that out, we have to zoom way out from the personal character drama and look at the grand sci-fi lore here. Tracing this catastrophic timeline, everything points back to ASNC, this highly secretive research corp. In the past, they were running an experiment, trying to open a portal to a parallel universe, but right as they flipped the switch, a massive global earthquake hit. That combination didn't just open one door, it accidentally tore random portals all over the globe. It perfectly explains why, early on in the film, an ASNC researcher just randomly watches a live bird fly into their sealed underground dimension. It literally just fell through a tear in reality. And this global tear is what birthed what we call liminal space. Just to define that clearly, liminal spaces are basically places meant for transition. Think of a hospital hallway at 3 a.m. or an empty school corridor during summer break. They're places that are supposed to be full of people. So when they're completely empty, your brain instinctively registers that something is horribly wrong. That specific dreamlike dread, that is exactly the feeling the Backrooms are built on. Now, Async didn't just break the world and walk away. They actively tried to study it. You know those weird upside-down light switches in Clark's basement? Yeah, that wasn't just a glitch. Async secretly wired those. They were actually watching Clark through cameras, setting gas traps in his store's replica to try and capture this interdimensional SCP-style entity. They were literally treating this horrific dimension like their own personal science experiment. Wild, right? All right, moving on to Section 4, the broken photocopy theory, flawed replications. This is honestly the absolute most crucial analogy in this whole explainer for understanding how this place processes things. Seriously, just think of the Backrooms as a giant, broken photocopy machine. It desperately tries to duplicate human memories and real-world places, but its memory retention is just awful. Because it gets things so terrifyingly wrong, you end up with these endless rooms with totally distorted architecture. And it gets worse. When people actually manage to leave, it tries to copy them too, spawning what the film calls still-life clones. Which brings us to Section 5, the still life, the true cost of escape. Let's focus on the ultimate tragedy here. What actually happens to the people who survive? Like Mary. So, Mary executes this absolutely brutal, desperate escape. She physically smashes the demonic entity using a chunk of concrete that literally holds her own childhood handprints. It's a deeply symbolic way of using her past to fight her trauma, right? She actually makes it back through the wall, but man, her escape is so bittersweet. She wakes up immediately as a prisoner of Async in the real world, forced to help them navigate these portals. But the absolute kicker? A piece of her never actually left. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the horrific duality it creates. We've got the real Mary, alive, sure, but trapped working for Async. But because the Backrooms acts like that broken photocopy machine we talked about, her escaping triggered a replication. Now there is a still life Mary, a disfigured, completely emotionless clone just wandering the Backrooms forever. And the most chilling part of the whole shebang? Because the Backrooms is inextricably tied to reality, that clone perfectly mimics Mary's physical movements in real time, forever trapped in the dark while the real Mary goes about her life. It's just such a haunting reminder that we all carry baggage we can't fully outrun. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with something to really think about. If the Backrooms replicated your mind right now, if it absorbed your deepest flaws and your unresolved past, what would your infinite, personal, liminal space look like? What entity would be waiting for you in the dark? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and remember, always keep questioning the reality around you.